same old struggle of what is a conservative and what is a Republican, and can they be the same thing? Conservatives will tell you that while they may have Republican values, they are conservative first and Republican second. Republicans out there that are in the so-called establishment, maybe a little more moderate than the further right of center conservatives, would tell you that they're more pragmatic, that they're into compromise, that they're into, governance, that, they have their eye on the big picture. It's very interesting to see what's going to happen here, because right now, as we were talking about earlier, with President Trump trying to pull his base out for the 2018 midterms for his own purposes, will the president have coattails for these upstart challenges from different people? To me, the answer is maybe. I think it all depends on the bona fide credentials of each candidate. Can you say that my friend of the show, past guest, Sharon Angle, would benefit from a Trump wave? When you look at that race, the congressman she's running against has voted with Donald Trump 96% of the time. 96% of the time. That's not really a rhino, quote unquote, that the conservative base or the Trump base, if you want to separate them out, would say is a bad congressman and one that should be targeted for a primary. Dan Donovan, on the other hand, in the People's Republic of New York, may be such a target because he has voted in ways that make him more of a centrist, but that district is a centrist district when compared to the rest of the nation. It could go either way, depending upon, the issue of the day. Michael Grimm, on the other hand, is painting himself as the outsider. But how can he be an outsider when he was a two-term congressman who has since been disgraced? Isn't he part of Washington? And will he have coattails, even though he doesn't have the bona fide credentials of the outsider? He may have more of a chance to ride a Trump coattail than Sharon Angle does, because of the nature of the challenger. And finally, Paul Ryan, in that race in Wisconsin with Nick Polce that we've been talking about, he will not have the same coattails, I think, as Trump, if you believe what Nick is saying about the unrest with Paul Ryan himself in his own district. Remember the race with Eric Cantor that Congressman Bratt won in a surprise? There's a lesson there to be learned for Paul Ryan. Don't lose your local base. If you lose your local base, it doesn't matter how much power you wield in Washington. Eric Cantor wasn't he in the leadership of the congressional Republican delegation? He was high up there. I think it was number 2. So to me, if you lose there's different lessons here. The lesson in Wisconsin is don't lose your base, and let's see what happens. Maybe the Trump effect isn't so prevalent there. Maybe Nick Polce gets on the map because of the Trump effect. Maybe he gets on the map because he has actual bona fide credentials for being a conservative. Maybe he gets on the map because his veteran background appeals to people. Maybe he gets on the map because his business acumen resonates with people. Who knows what resonates with the voters? All politics is local. So when we start talking about the macro view of conservative disruptors and usurpers and upstarts versus establishment, it's a lot deeper than that for these races. We just went through 3 different races, and we have 3 different analyses, and they're very much micro-analyses compared to the macro view of politics. All politics is local, folks. You got to take care of the people that are voting for you first and foremost. Those running in national races or statewide races have the luxury to overlook certain constituencies. Not so much in a congressional race. You can't whittle it down that much more and forget about certain people within your own segments that you're then going to need in a general election when the entire population of the district votes. So it's this great balancing act that's going on in these three different races. A great illustration of the regional nature of politics and the different permutations that can come out of primary season. Which is why, folks, I term it the silly season. You're going to see news hits all over the place throughout the summer. And if you're one of those triple prime voters, one of those voters that is out there always paying attention to politics, you may be enjoying yourself this year with all the embarrassment of riches you'll have to choose from. But if you're not a participant, and we've been saying this theme throughout the whole show, if you're just a spectator and you're not actively thinking, actively engaging in all this, A, look at all the fun you're missing, and B, look at the world as it passes you by. That's all that's happening here. But since you're listening to this show, we're confident that you are right there with us, thinking, processing the information. You know, you keep on thinking, you keep on believing, you keep on having an opinion, and that's why we love having you here behind enemy lines. Just about time for a final thought here on the show. Final thought this week. You know what? We've talked a lot about the cyclical nature of politics and the analysis for 2018. We're sort of in the calm before the storm. You're seeing the sides are starting to mount up in those states. You're seeing people starting to get their ballot qualifications out, whether it being paying for the fee or getting a certain amount of signatures, especially for federal races going on right now and federal primaries. We're revving up for 2018, folks. It's going to be maybe even more of a wild ride than 2016 was. Let's see what happens. There's a whole bunch of new players involved now, from high school on up. People you love to hate, people you hate to love. And politics is going to be... Man, politics, I can't quit you. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be an addiction this year for me. It's going to be a real whirlwind to follow. And, you know, we'll see what happens on the road to 2018. And speaking of that road to 2018, it's time for this part of the road to shut down a little bit. We're going to take the off-ramp for a little bit, hit the rest stop, come back next week, merge on even stronger than we were before. I want to thank everybody for listening to the show. I want to thank Nick Polce for coming on the show. Nick Polce for Congress. Check him out, running in the 1st District in Wisconsin, the 1st Congressional District. Check out his information. And if there are other races you want us to highlight, you let us know, and we'll do it. I'm sure we're going to continue a lot of discussions, especially the immigration discussion that we had today. We're going to be continuing that next week. You can pretty much bank on that. But until next week, it's time to shut this sucker down. Thanks for listening to Behind Enemy Lines Radio. Check us out at www.behindenemylinesradio.us. And until next week, folks, from the People's Republic of New York, Behind Enemy Lines Radio, Gene Baradelli, we are out of here. Good night, folks. Our position has been compromised. It's time to roll out. Report for debriefing at www.behindenemylinesradio.us and look for regular communications via Facebook and Twitter at BEL_radio. You are the resistance. Behind Enemy Lines. A rock radio production. Back in 7 days. Out.